Hi yogis and yoginis, welcome to Yoga with Shannon. So today we are going to work on something that very often sends the fear of everything into people's hearts when they hear it in the middle of yoga class. We're going to work on headstand. So headstand has been getting a really bum rap over the past few years, right? As being dangerous. Dangerous, why? Because a lot of people have been compressing their cervical spine. Indeed, if headstand is not taught safely and correctly, you can compress your cervical spine. So that's why we don't do headstand in front of the wall. You work on your prep away from the wall, and then when you're ready to kick up, you work on kicking up away from the wall. So once you take the wall out of the equation and the idea that you're going to get up the very first time, usually you can stay safe, because in order to come all the way up into headstand, you really have to be engaging the pelvic floor, reaching the tailbone up and back. So we're going to talk about how to come into a headstand safely, and a lot of that is going to be prep work. So you may be doing your prep work for your headstand for 4 weeks, 4 months, 4 years. Okay, everybody's different, everybody's body feels it differently. So just patience here, because the journey is what creates the change. So we're going to think about the mechanics of a headstand or any inversion. So in an inversion, it's important to remember, right, that we have something working against us when we're going up. Actually, it's two things. The first thing is gravity. Gravity pulls us down naturally, right? And then the second thing is the weight of our head in this posture. So the weight of our head and gravity are two big gigantic whammies pulling us towards the floor, okay? Now, if you think about yoga meaning union, right, and trying to find balance in your body, right, and a lot of other things, but that's a whole nother talk. Trying to find balance in your body, you're going to want to try to find balance in the posture. So being pulled forward by gravity and the weight of the head, okay, we already have one direction. How do we find the second direction, right? The lifting up and back. That's where the engagement of the pelvic floor comes into play. This can be really challenging, especially when you're in a different orientation, at this point being upside down. But there are a couple of tricks that you can play with to really feel how to lift the pelvic floor, right? Find that internal lift and make your headstand light. So let's figure out, first thing first, where we're gonna bring our elbows, okay? So when you come into your headstand, it's important to think that you want to use everything to your advantage, right? Gravity to your advantage and lifting to your advantage. You also here don't want to just muscles through the shoulders. You want to be able to stack the bones. So in order to stack the bones, you're going to have to bring the elbows directly underneath the shoulders. So in order to do this, you're going to come onto your mat and bring those elbows directly underneath the shoulders. We have a tendency to splay the elbows out a little bit too wide. So you'll know your elbows are splayed out too wide if you come down and you try to bring your hands onto your elbows and you can't, okay? So a great way to know that your elbows are exactly where they should be is you're going to pull the elbows in and measure off one hand to the elbow and the other hand to the other elbow, okay? If you can touch your elbows successfully, that means that you're pretty measured off pretty well, okay? So that's the first thing we're gonna work on. And the second thing we wanna think about is what to do with the hands. So I see a lot of people when they come into headstand, holding and clasping their hands like they're gonna hold their brains into their head. Well, I've got some great news. Your skull does that for you. So you don't have to worry about holding your brains in with your hands. And as a matter of fact, the more you clasp the hands, right, and the more you squeeze and engage those hands, the more you're going to start energetically pulling yourself forward. You're going to lose the suppleness in the shoulders, which we're really looking for in this posture, and you're going to start losing the suppleness in the back. Okay, so an open thoracic spine is just as important as everything else in this posture. And the minute you start clasping the hands, right, you kind of cement up the entire area. So what we're going to do is we're going to think about just softly clasping the hands, right? Soft. You know, at this point you could do anything, right? Hand in front of hand, hand beside hand. It's all pretty much academic. But for this intents and purpose, we're going to clasp the hands. And a lot of people like to recommend one pinky over the other. Some people like to stack the pinkies inside each other. So for me, it's just a personal preference. Whatever works best for you is great. So once you've figured that out, okay, we're gonna have to figure out how to keep that weight moving up and back in this posture. So we're gonna do that with working on some strength for the core, working on some opening for the thoracic spine and the shoulder girdles, and working on a little bit of opening for the hips. So first things first, we're gonna work on strengthening, okay? So we're gonna come into dolphin. This is a prep for headstand. You might do it a lot in your regular yoga classes, even when you're not coming into headstand. So once again, measuring those elbows off and clasping the hands. Here, broadening through the collarbones, pulling the belly in and up. You're gonna tuck the toes and send the tailbone up and back. Here, you really can see that opening through the thoracic spine as I pull my belly in, bringing the rim of the ribs towards the thighs. So you may want to play around here a little bit by bringing the rim of the ribs towards the thighs and finding that opening between the shoulders into the thoracic spine, okay? From here, you're going to bring those feet back just a little bit, and you're going to inhale, roll forward into plank pose. Push the floor away, engage through the core as you pull the ribs into the midline, okay? Exhale, coming back. So you should be able to do at least 20 of these dolphin dives and do it without feeling too much strain or effort, right? If you're exhausted after 20, that probably means you're not quite ready. 20 is a great kind of benchmark for how much strength you need to have in order to lift yourself up safely into headstand, especially when it comes to engaging the core. So if you've done your 20 dolphin dives and you're feeling comfortable and you want to work on the next part of this, we're going to start really working on how to find the pelvic floor and that lift, right? So the lift in this posture is going to come by the idea of sending the tailbone up and back, right? So you're sending the energy away from the head. This is pretty easy. You do this probably a lot as well. So you're going to come into your prep, okay? Just like we did a minute ago, dolphin. This looks very familiar. Bend those knees. Now here, you did this before. You're going to bend the knees, pull the belly in, and send the tailbone up and back. When you do that, you're really lifting through the pelvic floor. Now the challenge here is to keep this going on as you start walking forward, okay? So when you come into headstand, headstand is actually a misnomer. You put very little weight on the head. You really want to think about most of the weight coming from about 4 inches, 3 inches up from the elbows and back, okay? So you're really sending the energy back to the point that those hands can even lift off of the floor, okay? Now, when you start walking those feet forward, if you feel like you're starting to dump forward, which means there's a lot of weight in the hands, and you feel less weight through the elbows, that means you probably need to stay put and work where you are, okay? So, moving on from here, right? The tailbone's moving up and back, and I'm going to start broadening through the collarbones once again and walking the feet forward. So at any point, when I walk my feet forward, if I start rounding through the spine, I know it's time for me to take a few steps back and once again work with broadening through the collarbones and sending the tailbone up and back. This might be where you stay with the head off the floor, really rooting down through the last 2 to 3 inches of those elbows. You might stay here for 6 to 8 months, okay? And little by little, you're going to start walking those feet forward. The head is still off of the mat. And at a certain point, you're going to let the head drop onto the mat. So here, if you start feeling any weight, right, just any undue pressure, you're going to back off just a few steps, broaden through the collarbones, really work on pulling the tailbone up and back as you pull in through the navel, and take the weight off of that head. If you're here, right, with those hips directly over the shoulders, you're going to start working on coming up into your headstand. So here you can bring one leg in and the other leg, okay? If this feels comfortable, you're going to bring both legs in. Here, lengthening through the spine, continuing to broaden through the shoulders. Belly pulls in and up, and extend through those legs. Here, reaching through the balls of the feet. The fingers are light, as you can see. Okay? And exhale, coming down. Now, where does the hip opening come into this? The hip opening comes into this as you walk the feet up towards the shoulders, okay? Without having open hips, you can't get that length through the spine. So, if you have worked on opening your hips are feeling really nice and open, that thoracic spine is feeling open, I recommend that you actually try this variation to get up into your headstand, simply because in the first variation where you bring those knees into the chest, right, you kind of close the body down a little bit. But, right, and so in order to lift, you need to find your balance once again, and then lift the legs up. So that's 2 times finding balance. We're already upside down. It's already difficult enough as it is. So if your hips are really open, we're going to work on a variation that looks a little bit more challenging, but is actually a lot easier, okay? Because you only have to find your balance once. So let's try it. So working on all the same aspects that we've been talking about, you're going to come into your headstand prep, okay? Broadening through the collarbones, belly pulling in and up. Tuck those toes and start walking those feet forward, okay? Hips are directly over the shoulders. Continue to broaden. So here what you're going to do is you're going to leave that right leg really nice and engaged. Reach through the ball of the left foot. Reach, 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 and open. You're going to continue to reach with the ball of the left foot, so much so that that right leg lifts off of the ground. Continue to broaden through the collarbones. Reach through the ball of that left foot and bring that right foot to meet it. Okay? So here, definitely much easier, right? Because you only have to find that balance once. Taking a few breaths. Really, ideally, it's best to take at least 40 to 50 breaths up here, but just take as many as it feels comfortable. And exhale, you're going to release down in the same way you came up. Taking child's pose here for about 10 to 15 breaths to smooth out the breath in the body, to allow the blood to redistribute, move away from the head, and inhaling, coming up. So it takes time. Headstand is a process like a lot of things in life and a lot of things in yoga. But with patience, right, awareness and strength, you'll be able to do it. So good luck, have a great day, and thanks for practicing with me.